deadlines given to the committee by NEC, because the committee is to be formed when we get inputs from the states on their representatives. But inherently, we are all going to be working towards that June unless the new administration has a different plan. We that are here now are going to do the work with the representatives of the incoming administration, and we will exit and leave them to continue with the implementation of the plan. The issue of the advice from the rating of Nigeria by the IMF, we're glad that the IMF rating is at 3.2, which is marking exactly our own assessment of what our growth is going to be. There is general global economic slowdown. So as a matter of fact, middle-income countries are outperforming the global economic assessment, which means our countries are doing better than what the global assessment is. Yes, IMS will always advise to raise taxes, and it makes a lot of sense when you are having a very tight fiscal place. You want to expand your revenue base. And expanding revenue base could mean expanding the tax base, improving efficiency in your tax collection, and enhancing compliance, but also increasing maybe some certain level of taxes. So the next administration may want to be looking at increasing of some certain categories of taxes, maybe, for example, the VAT might be revisited. And on the issue of debt, we have our debt service obligations well planned. Nigeria continued to meet its debt service obligations, and we are, of course, having to slow down on borrowing, except for what is absolutely necessary, because our revenues are not increasing at the same quantum at which global interest rates are increasing. Global interest rates are increasing so fast, so whether you borrow or not, or add to your borrowing or not, your interest expense keeps going higher, and when your borrowing is borrowing is denominated in foreign currency, your borrowing cost increases without you having to do anything. So we're managing the situation so far very well, and we're meeting our debt service obligations. And on the part of the states, we also have provided a lot of support to the states, and the states from the distribution process at FAC also are consistently meeting their own debt service obligations. From foreign borrowing to local borrowing, the states will issue ISPOs to the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and the debt service is effected. So we don't have any debt defaults at the federal government as well as at the state level. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I was in the National Economic Council, where we discussed the issue of fuel subsidy removal. Council agreed that the timing for the removal of fuel subsidy should not be now, but that we should continue with all of the preparatory works that needs to be done, and that this preparatory work has to be done in consultation with the states and other key stakeholders, including representatives of the incoming administration. Council agreed that the fuel subsidy must be removed earlier rather than later, because it is not sustainable. We cannot afford it anymore, but we have to do it in such a way that the impact of the subsidy is, as much as possible, mitigated on the lives of the ordinary Nigerians. So this will require looking at alternatives to the fuel subsidy that needs to be planned for and subsequently put in place, but also what needs to be done to support the people that will be most affected as a result of the removal. So we will be working together with representatives of the state. We will have a plan that we will start working on putting the building blocks towards the eventual removal of the fuel subsidy. And if I may remind the forum that the budget for 2023 had provision for fuel subsidy only up to June 2023, and also the Petroleum Industry Act has a provision that requires that all petroleum products must be deregulated 18 months after the effective date of the PMS removal, and that period is also up to June 2023. I said that we agreed to form an expanded committee that will be looking at the process for the removal, including determining the exact time and also the measures that need to be taken to provide support to the poor and the vulnerable, and then also the alternatives that will be put in place, including ensuring that there is sufficient supply of petroleum products in the country. So this is a decision that has been taken to expand the committee that is currently working with representatives of the state. And it means also we'll have to be engaging with labor, we'll have to be engaging with petroleum marketers. The immediate committee is just comprising the Ministry of Finance, the NNPC, the regulator, the downstream upstream regulator, as well as the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Plan. So there will be an expanded committee so that it is not just a few people's thoughts that will guide the process, that there is sufficient consultation, taking inputs from key stakeholders into the measures that need to be taken. Yes, what I said is that it is not going to be removed now, which means it will not be removed before the transition is completed. That's what it means. But then we have two laws that have inadvertently made the provision that we should exit by June. So if the committee's work, which will include the representatives of the incoming administration, determine that the removal can be done by June, then the work plan will be designed to exit as of June. But if the determination is that the period needs to be extended, it will mean that we will have, as a country, will have to revisit the Appropriation Act, for example, because the 2023 budget only made provision up to June. So if we are extending beyond June, it means we have to revisit the Appropriation Act and do a supplementary or amend the bill, and also the PIA. These are the reasons why we had to do this consultation with NEC to get inputs from the governors. They are going to provide to us their representatives to work together with us to have a defined process that will take us towards the removal. But one thing that is clear is everybody agreed that the subsidy should be removed very quickly, because the cost is only not efficient, but it's also not sustainable. And that when the time comes for removal, the removal will be done once and for all. On the issue of the 800 million, so far what we have is that 800 million that has been secured. We're hoping that with the removal of fuel subsidy, with the savings that removal will cause, that the federation and the federation, which is federal government and state, themselves will be able to provide further measures from this increased revenue that will accrue to the federation account. Again, that is a matter of discussion. The states may have their own, they may want to have their own design programs. The federal government may want to do something different. So we have to discuss how to utilize that savings. And that's one thing that was also presented today at the National Economic Council.